I'm here today with heavy hearts to share the news that Brian Wilson, the musical genius behind the Beach Boys, has passed away at the age of 82. Today, we're going to explore the extraordinary life, the groundbreaking music, and the complex struggles of one of America's greatest songwriters. Brian Wilson didn't just create catchy surf songs. He revolutionized popular music and became America's answer to the Beatles, Lennon, and McCartney. But his story is one of both triumph and tragedy, of soaring creativity and devastating mental health battles. Brian Douglas Wilson was born on June 20th, 1942, in Inglewood, California, to Murray and Audrey Wilson. Growing up in Hawthorne, California, Brian was the eldest of three brothers. Dennis and Carl would later become his bandmates in the Beach Boys. From an early age, Brian showed exceptional musical talent. Despite being deaf in his right ear from birth, likely due to a congenital condition, he developed an incredible ability to hear and arrange harmonies. His father, Murray, though often abusive and controlling, did recognize Brian's musical gifts and push the boys toward music. In 1961, at just 19 years old, Brian formed the Beach Boys with his brothers Dennis and Carl, his cousin Mike Love, and friend Al Jardine. Their first hit, Surfin', was recorded in the Wilson family living room and became a regional success in California. But Brian's vision extended far beyond simple surf songs. While other bands were content with basic rock and roll, Brian heard symphonies in his head. The early Beach Boys hits like Surfin' Safari, Surfer Girl, and Little Deuce Coupe established them as the voice of California youth culture. But Brian Wilson wasn't satisfied with just capturing the beach lifestyle. He wanted to push the boundaries of what popular music could be. In 1964, something clicked for Brian when he heard the Beatles' Rubber Soul. He called it the album that changed my life, and felt challenged to create something equally artistic. This led to one of the most ambitious projects in popular music history, Pet Sounds. Released in 1966, Pet Sounds wasn't initially a commercial success in America, but it was a critical masterpiece. Songs like God Only Knows, Wouldn't It Be Nice, and Caroline No showcased Brian's sophisticated arrangements, unconventional instruments, and deeply personal lyrics about love, loss, and growing up. Paul McCartney later called Pet Sounds his favorite album, saying it directly inspired the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The album's influence on popular music cannot be overstated. It showed that pop music could be art. But Brian's masterpiece came with Good Vibrations in 1966, a song that took 6 months and cost $50,000 to produce, an astronomical sum at the time. The song reached #1 and showcased Brian's innovative use of the theremin and his complex harmonic structures. Following Pet Sounds, Brian began work on what many consider his most ambitious project, Smile. Working with lyricist Van Dyke Parks, Brian envisioned Smile as a teenage symphony to God, a complex, conceptual album that would revolutionize popular music. The sessions were legendary for their innovation. Brian used session musicians known as the Wrecking Crew and experimented with modular recording, creating musical sections that could be rearranged like building blocks. He incorporated everything from celery crunching to fire extinguishers as percussion instruments. But the pressure was immense. Brian was working 16-hour days, experimenting with LSD, and feeling the weight of having to follow up Pet Sounds. The other Beach Boys, particularly Mike Love, were resistant to Brian's increasingly abstract direction, preferring their earlier commercial success. In 1967, Smile was shelved incomplete. This decision haunted Brian for decades and marked the beginning of his withdrawal from public life and the music industry. The failure to complete Smile sent Brian into a deep depression and marked the start of his most troubled period. He began experiencing what would later be diagnosed as schizoaffective disorder, a condition combining symptoms of schizophrenia and mood disorders. Brian's mental health struggles were compounded by his increasing isolation. He stopped touring with the Beach Boys in 1964, preferring to stay in the studio. But after Smile, he often couldn't even leave his bedroom. He spent nearly 3 years in bed, gaining significant weight and struggling with substance abuse. During this period, His controlling father Murray sold the publishing rights to the Beach Boys songs for just $700,000, a decision that would cost Brian millions in royalties over his lifetime. In the 1970s, Brian fell under the controversial care of psychologist Dr. Eugene Landy, who used unconventional and often criticized methods. While Landy did help Brian lose weight and return to music making, he also isolated Brian from his family and friends, eventually gaining control over Brian's personal and professional life. The 1980s and 1990s saw Brian slowly reclaiming his life and career. He married Melinda Ledbetter in 1995, who became instrumental in freeing him from Dr. Landy's control and helping him reconnect with his children and music. In 2004, at age 62, Brian finally completed Smile, nearly 40 years after he first envisioned it. The album was released to critical acclaim and won a Grammy Award, proving that Brian's vision had been ahead of its time. His later years saw a remarkable creative renaissance. He released several solo albums, toured regularly performing Pet Sounds in its entirety, and received numerous honors, including induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist in 1988 and with the Beach Boys in 1988. Brian continued performing into his 80s, finally receiving the recognition he deserved as one of America's greatest composers. Musicians from Paul McCartney to Radiohead cited him as a major influence. Brian remained active as a touring artist through 2022, but his health began declining significantly. In early 2024, following the death of his beloved wife Melinda in January, his family announced that he was suffering from dementia. A conservatorship was established to help with his immediate personal needs. Today, we lost not just a musician, but a true American original. Brian Wilson showed us that popular music could be profound, that 3-minute songs could contain symphonies, and that vulnerability in art could be its greatest strength. His influence extends far beyond the Beach Boys hits. Every time you hear complex harmonies in pop music, innovative studio techniques, or conceptual albums, you're hearing Brian Wilson's influence. Artists from the Beatles to Radiohead, from Kanye West to Animal Collective, have drawn inspiration from his groundbreaking work. Brian Wilson leaves behind a catalog of songs that will outlive all of us. Good Vibrations, God Only Knows, California Girls, and Pet Sounds aren't just great songs, they're part of the American Songbook, perfect expressions of youth, love, and the California dream. But perhaps more importantly, Brian showed us that mental illness doesn't diminish genius. It can coexist with extraordinary creativity. His struggles were real and devastating, but they never diminished the beauty he brought into the world. Rest in peace, Brian Wilson. Thank you for the Good Vibrations, the Pet Sounds, and for showing us that pop music could touch the divine. Your music will echo through eternity. If this tribute moved you, please like and subscribe to The Truth About for more stories of the legends who shaped our world. And let us know in the comments, what's your favorite Brian Wilson song?